Welcome to ADHD Whiskey. My name is Matt. Today, we're talking about the most beautiful labels you can find on a bourbon bottle. We've all fell victim to the beautiful label. You're walking through a store, you're minding your own business, and out of the corner of your eye, you're like, what in the heck is that? It's a beautiful bottle of bourbon. But is the whiskey inside as nice as that label, or did they play trickery McTrickster on you? That depends on the bottle. But I want to share with you what I think are some of the best labels attached to bottles these days. Before we get this list started, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, and let me tell you about today's video sponsor. Today's video is brought to us by our great friends over at Magic Spoon. But today we're not talking about their cereal. Today we're talking about their brand new Magic Spoon Treats. Magic Spoon Treats are the perfect high protein snack for when you're on the go. It's the same magic you know and love, but in a convenient travel-friendly package. These treats come in two delicious flavors, marshmallow and chocolate peanut butter. I packed a marshmallow in my 6-year-old's lunch today. These bad boys only ring in at 130 calories with 11 grams of protein, 1 gram of sugar, and only 1 to 2 grams of net carbs. If I eat the marshmallow one, I'm gonna be in trouble with the kids. So let's dive face first into this high protein, keto friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, wheat-free, naturally flavored, totally delicious childlike treat for grown-ups. That is very good. Click on my link in the description below or scan this QR code on the screen and save $5 off your order. Head on over to magicspoon.com/ADHD and stock up on your favorite cereals, and don't forget to add some of their delicious treats. Thank you Magic Spoon for sponsoring this video, and thank you for having a 100% happiness guarantee. So what bottles have the best labels? Turns out the tall ones. There's kind of a theme here. Tall bottles. But I'll start with the shortest first. Barrel King might be an online only club, but if it were sitting on a store shelf, that label is just plain pretty. This Barrel King knighted with the baby blue and the white and the gold, just an overall beautiful label. It doesn't blow your mind and stand out super hard, but if you glance at it, you kind of stop and go, ooh, elegant. Next on the list is a bottle that is pretty rare because every release is a different label. These are rare character single barrels, and they have artwork provided by the person who picked the bottle. This one is an old pick of mine, ADHD Fishing. But as you walk by the artwork on the shelf, you kind of glance at it and go, what in the world's happening here? On this bottle of whiskey, let me look nearer. Third on the list is probably one of the most classic labels in all of bourbon, something you stop and look at and go, wow, that just fits and looks old-time-ish and pretty friggin' gangster. Kentucky Owl Bourbon Whiskey has a label on it that just stands out and looks like, what's the right word? Antique-y? It just looks antique-y and sharp and intriguing and interesting. It says Wise Man's Bourbon on the label, but it's like, almost like just a wise man's label on the bourbon, right? Overall, I think this is one of my favorite labels on a whiskey in the game. Very pretty. If we want to stick to a Dixon Deadman theme, we can do that. Kentucky Owl was a Dixon Deadman product not that long ago. And the label speaks for itself as far as like shelf appeal. But Dixon moved on, started his own brand after selling Kentucky Owl, but when he moved on to browner pastures, because it's bourbon, he really made sure his new brand would stand out on the shelf. 2XO is just a beautiful bottle, black and gold, that classic black and gold. Every blend has a different crest on it, and it is really hard not to stop and stare at this and at least contemplate picking one up and buying it, because geez Louise, he must have hired somebody good to make the bottle look this good. Unless of course he's just good at everything. Speaking of antique and cool, Old Carter Whiskey has one of the same type of labels as the Kentucky Owl. It just looks beautiful. It's got the texture on it. It's got the heavy horse that was illustrated by Sherry Carter. It kind of looks expensive. And it is expensive. And you kind of want to take it off the store shelf and put it on yours at home. If you've been following the channel for a serious length of time, this won't come as a surprise to you, but Redwood Empire has amazing bottles. The artwork on their bottles is so fancy and so nice. It's textured and you can kind of like feel what's happening. It's got all kinds of like detail inside the labeling. It's a dude with a beard with trees growing out of his head and beards. And it's like John Muir this, John Muir that. All of their labels have just crazy good artwork, and they just kind of make you stop and look at them and go, I want to look a little bit closer at what the heck's happening with dude's head. Redwood Empire killing the label game. This list wouldn't be complete unless we talked about the Big P, and I'm not talking about porter, I'm talking about Penelope. Penelope labels stand out on the shelf kind of like no other. They have these tall, bright labels with a big P on them. They're not extremely complex, but they just stick out. They kind of like a bright light in the night. You walk by a Penelope shelf and you're like, wow, look at all those P's. Shelf appeal, probably one of the reasons that Penelope recently sold for like $200 million. Whew. And that leads us to our final, most beautiful labels in the game today. They are friends of mine, so take it with a grain of salt, but if you're talking about something that has shelf appeal and stands out on the shelf, look no further than Virtue Spirits. When these babies hit shelves, you know, wherever they're gonna be sold, look at that. There's no way you can like just walk by those. Look at them. You got bears and they got friggin' bulls and they're all shiny and gold and purple and just like, what in the heck? They have so much happening on the label and so much fun to look at. They look like professional sports teams of whiskey, and I kind of dig that. I kind of dig that. Look at that. I set them here and they just stand out like a sore thumb, if a sore thumb was a good thing. Virtue Spirits labels, love them or hate them, you can't deny that they do stick out and will definitely draw an eye. That's gonna do it for the best whiskey labels in the game as far as I'm concerned. In the comments down below, what did I miss? What do you think I missed? What bourbon labels or whiskey labels do you see and you stop and go, wow, that's amazing and pretty? Oh, actually that's a lie. I just realized I had Willet sitting there. Willet bottles are super tall and beautiful as well. Their labels with like their crest or whatever is like really neat. I forgot to mention Willet. Willet is pretty friggin' sweet looking bottle. You can't deny that. And another one down by my feet that I forgot to mention, Midwinter Night's Dram. Another tall bottle, another classic label. It looks old-timey because it's literally copying something old-timey like Shakespeare stuff. And it's got like the speckled glass in there. So it just kind of is different, not super complicated, but interesting label that will draw an eye. A Midwinter Night's Dram. Look at all these tall bottles with pretty labels. If you're gonna have a whiskey in a super tall bottle, you better have a label that's gonna catch the eye. Otherwise, it's just gonna get lost on the shelf. These bottles won't have the super cool shapes like the previous video that I posted, link right there. So for the lack of cool shaped bottle, they must make up for it with a label that attracts the consumer's eye. Otherwise, you're just gonna sit there and have nobody buy, right? There are some examples of bad labeling, but I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole. But you can kind of tell which brands don't have like the necessary perfect labeling on them because they are changing quite a bit. But I guess some other brands just have crappy labels and never change. If we think about brands that have yet to find their brand identity on a label, Wild Turkey sure rings a bell. The way that they change the Russell's Reserve labels constantly and the Wild Turkey 101 labels constantly. It's like they're trying to find the way to bridge classic bourbon with eye-catching labels while also involving a turkey. So in the comments below, tell me which bottles stand out the most and which labels you see on bottles that could definitely use an update. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Matt, this is ADHD Whiskey. Like I always say, keep your head in the clouds but your mind on being true to your label. If you label yourself as a good person, then damn it, be one.